I've been getting tons of questions about what rods I'm using, and I'm not sponsored by any rod company yet. I'd like to be at some point, but I just haven't really put the effort in. And everybody always asks me, what rod do I use? What's the best rod? And I'm going to tell you two different things, and I'm going to tell you why I use the rods that I use. So initially I was a bass fishing guy, so we want really, really sensitive rods for bass fishing because most of the bites are coming from a fish that inhales the jig into their mouth. They literally, great suction, and they suck that jig in. You want to be able to feel that so you can set the hook and not gut hook the fish, because you want to release them and keep them in the live well for a tournament or whatever you're doing. Now, most of my videos, if you guys have seen, we are catching lake trout on the chase. We are running them from top to bottom. In that case, it is not a field bite at all. All you're doing is you're waiting for that rod to load up, and then you're gonna set the hook. So it's super, super easy. You don't need a really expensive rod. Now, I am using expensive rods because I do this full time for a living, and I wanna have that really sensitive bite when I'm down jigging in the mud for those finicky lake trout, which I'm used to fishing for, which I'm kind of glad that I fish in a lake that has finicky lake trout and not Sebago where we're on now, or Lake Champlain, where they just eat way more often than other places that I fish. I'm going to go through all of the rods that I use. Now, some of them are expensive, some of them they don't make anymore. Two of my favorite rods they don't make anymore. So what I'm going to suggest is this. So I'm going to show you the real reason why I use different rods. You can use one rod that will cover all of this. It'll be really good at nothing, basically. So I have 4 different rods, and I use them for 4 different size jigs. Now the reason for that, and hopefully this camera can see, hope there's not too much sunlight. So see, it's hard to show you guys here. So there's different wire gauges of hooks, right? So this one's 2 ounce, this one's super, see how thick that wire is? And this one's a little bit thinner, that one's a little bit thinner, and then this one's super thin. Now, the whole purpose of the rod, especially on the chase, is to have that lake trout bite onto it, and then you need to have enough backbone in your rod to set the hook into that fish's mouth even more than it already is. And most of the time it's just hung in there, and you want to set that hook. So for this 1/4 ounce one that has a really thin wire, I like a Shimano Expride. It's an expensive rod. It's a 7-foot, basically medium, and it's rated for 3/16 of an ounce to 1/2 ounce. So I can run this with my 1/4 ounce, I can run this with my 3/8, and I can run that with a 1/2 ounce, as long as it's not a super heavy gauge wire hook like this one. This is 2 ounce. That, setting the hook on that probably slack line might even break this rod. My co-angler here in the boat has actually done that, which is really funny to watch. We're also matching the line to our rod. So I'm running 15-pound test on almost all of our rods, except for this big Mondo rod, which is for that 2 ounce jig. And I'm running 12-pound fluorocarbon leader, and you guys have seen that pretty much all of my videos. So when I'm looking for rods, if you're looking for rods at Bass Pro, if you're looking for rods at Cabela's, you want one that has a 70 or a 60-40 bend, or like a 50-50 bend. See how that's kind of a nice arc, right? We do not want a rod, I don't want to put my rod in the water here, it has a super fast tip, because what that's going to do is it's not going to allow those big head shigs from lake trout to keep that hook pinned when you haven't set the hook all the way, which is what happens the instant you hook them. So that's my light rod. This is my go-to rod. I just pretty much always have that one out. Then I have a G Loomis GCX. This is the GCX 842S SJR. This one's from 1/8 ounce to 3/8 of an ounce, from 6 to 12-pound test, and this is a fast action. I like this rod. It is not my favorite rod. It's more of a 70-30. If you guys can see that, I'm bending it right there like that. The only thing I like about this is the lifetime warranty. When I hand it to clients, I'm not super worried about losing all the money of a $250 plus rod. Then I also have G Loomis's bait caster set up. This is what I use for my 1 ounce. This is rated for 1/4 to 3/4 ounce. and I run a 1 ounce on it. It's a little heavy for it. 17-pound test. This one also is a little bit more backbone than I like, but it's great for setting that hook, and it's got that lifetime limited warranty basically. And this is the GCX 843CF. You don't need the inshore one that makes the eyelets more, I think, more stainless steel or whatever it is. What I do like is the long butt. And then my favorite rod that I've caught a lot of bigger Lakers on is my Cabela's Tournament Trail. They don't make this one anymore. This is IM7. This is rated for 3/8 to 2.5 ounces and 10 to 20-pound test. So this thing is a beast. That is meant to set the hook into this, you know, use this giant hook here, that really 0.073 gauge wire, really thick wire. So this one has, I think it's actually fiberglass, has some more of a moderate bend to it, and it's for whaling those big lake trout. I like 7-foot rods. You can go a little bit shorter. You get a little more torque on the fish doing that. If you're doing a lot of casting, go for a little bit longer. I only suggest casting for lake trout if you have Livescope. Otherwise, you're doing a lot of casting and not a lot of catching, unless you're up shallow in the fall, which is what we're doing right now, kind of. As for reels, I would much rather have a cheap reel, or actually a cheap rod that I can run to the surface, because it's not a feel bite. All that rod is doing is having a heavy backbone to set the hook, and then the reel is doing the rest of the work. So I run Shimano Vanfords, which are 250 bucks on all of my rods, or I have an Abu Garcia Revo SX, which is apparently bulletproof, because I've had it for years and I've really never maintained it, and it's been phenomenal. Apparently it's missing a screw right there, so I should probably fix that at some point. But there's my whole lineup for rods and the reasons why I use them. Like I said, I'm not sponsored by any of those. I will leave a bulleted list of the rods I have below. And like I said, none of these are my favorite rods, are really perfect for what I do, except for the Expride, because of that smaller jig size and because I target smaller Lakers with this. So if you want to get one of those rods or reels down below on Amazon, that helps me out a little bit. Click those links down below. And if you want to use the baits that you kind of saw me holding up there, visit benditfish.com. And if you want to learn more about lake trout, either click here or here, and I'll see you in one of those next videos.